Happy New Year, everyone. I hope you all had a great holiday season and the coming year treats you well. 2023 was definitely a busy year for me because this was when I began making YouTube videos in earnest. First, I uploaded a series of top 10 videos from the 21st of March to the beginning of June, and a little while ago I did a short set of videos compiling the 50-word reviews that had begun in text form on my blog. I was actually very excited to finish those before the end of the year because that was always my intention, and for a while it looked like it wasn't going to happen. Anyway, those videos only went as far as what at the time was my most recent blog post on the 4th of November, and naturally I've seen a few more movies since then. So let's reflect on the year's final couple of months with the last few reviews I wrote, concluding my experience with 2023's movie output. There's also one video game that I watched as a long play to see if I'd be interested in buying it, but we'll get to that. Let's start with the last 10 movies I saw in the cinema. The Marvels. A 3-way crossover involving Carol Danvers, Kamala Khan, and Monica Rambeau switching places whenever they use their powers. Interesting idea, but the story, on top of being generally mediocre, doesn't allow them any time to let their emotions manifest and get the audience emotionally involved before hurling them into action. My rating? 2.5 stars. The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. This prequel focuses on how Coriolanus Snow became the tyrannical president we all know. The writing and performances aren't really great, but it's interesting to see the Hunger Games in its early days and how the tournament already has some opposition even within the capital. Not bad, but not spellbinding. My rating? 3 stars. Thanksgiving. What began as a fake trailer for the Grindhouse double feature develops into a somewhat enjoyable horror romp. The script proficiently provides context for the scenes in the original trailer. Some transitions are so jarring that it feels like a scene's missing, but the outrageously exaggerated gore provides some laughs. My rating? 3 stars. Dream Scenario. It's a bizarre premise, amplified by the lack of a concrete explanation for why Paul appears in people's dreams or why said incursions become violent, although it does coincide with a certain act halfway through. Still, everything concerning his fame is handled very well, and Nicolas Cage's performance is fantastic. My rating? 3.5 stars. Saltburn. I don't want to spoil too much because most of what's good about it ties into the ending. I wouldn't call it great overall, but it's certainly unforgettable. Sometimes it's eccentric, and sometimes it's just plain fucked up. Plus, it's unusual to see a movie shot in 4:3 these days. My rating? 3.5 stars. Wish. An underwhelming Disney outing that explores no themes they haven't covered before. I like the art style at first, but it's still their 3D animation underneath, creating an awkward balance. The songs suck, except for the one about how we're all stars, because there is actually some truth to that. My rating? 2.5 stars. Napoleon. I hear it's extremely historically inaccurate, but regardless, it didn't set up the characters anywhere near well enough to get me invested in the situation. It's all details and no humanity. When the most memorable moment is a horse gruesomely blown apart by a cannon, you know you're in trouble. My rating? 2.5 stars. Wonka. It's directed by Paul King, and yeah, this definitely feels more like Paddington than Willy Wonka. It's way too sweet and saccharine to be recognizable as Roald Dahl's creation or the classic movie. The songs are okay, as are the plot, characters, and wholesome tone, but only in a vacuum. My rating? 3 stars. Godzilla Minus One. I've only seen a couple of Godzilla movies, but I can confidently say this is one of the absolute best. Not only are the special effects great, but the human drama is so intriguing that it remains interesting in Godzilla's absence. It uses the monster as an allegory for PTSD. My rating? 4 stars. The Boy and the Heron. The first half is highly promising, drawing on Mojito's grief and implying that the heron is a harbinger of death. Then he's led into an outlandish and mostly nonsensical realm. It's like it's trying to be spirited away, but not as effective because it feels jarring at the halfway point. My rating? 3.5 stars. It's worth mentioning that Godzilla Minus One and The Boy and the Heron each happen to be the first of their kind that I saw in the cinema, the first Godzilla movie and the first Studio Ghibli movie. Well, there was the 2014 Godzilla from Legendary Pictures if you want to count that. I'm talking strictly about the ones made by Toho. In both cases, I'd say not bad for a first example overall. Now, if you've seen my 2023 marathon video, remember how I mentioned that when I went to see The Blackening, there were 4 girls being so obnoxiously noisy that it severely dampened the experience for me? Well, the same thing happened with the Marvels, except this time it was a huge group of prepubescent boys taking up almost the entire back row. Not only were some of them talking so loudly that they sometimes drowned out the movie, but they kept walking around, leaving and coming back in, as if they were deliberately trying to be as disruptive as possible, and then acting like the people telling them to be quiet were the ones being unreasonable assholes. I mean, how selfish and arrogant could you get? Thankfully, at least a couple of them were sensible. Towards the end, I heard 1 or 2 try to tell the others how they were ruining the experience for the people around them, and they even apologized to me on their way out for their noisy companions' behavior. I also had a particularly bad experience with Wish. They were having technical issues and started the movie nearly half an hour late, and even then the sound wasn't on. When it did come on, I saw no point in watching from that point because I'd effectively missed the first 5 minutes anyway. For me, when it comes to watching movies, it's all or nothing. So I very nearly stormed out. Fortunately, they rewound the movie, but not quite all the way. So it certainly didn't help that I was in a bad mood going in, but I probably would have found the movie lacking regardless. With all that said, now for the last 6 movies I watched at home where I didn't have to worry about all that shit. Haunted Mansion. I don't know how faithful it is to the ride, but it's a rather banal movie regardless. While the mansion's story itself is interesting, the character drama is corny and its attempts at scares come off as trying too hard. It's better than the 2003 movie, but not by much. My rating? 2 stars. The Killer. You assume that the central revenge quest is somehow connected to the opening scene, but any possible connections are cursory and far from apparent. That and the often pretentious narration largely killed my interest, aside from a few memorable moments and a somber tone that matches the killer's pessimistic outlook. My rating? 2.5 stars. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. I still can't stand this Spider-Verse-esque animation style, but the film behind it is not bad. It provides tolerable, though not uproarious, humor through the turtles interacting in a way that feels natural and improvised, and even has its share of decent dramatic moments revolving around the theme of acceptance. My rating? 3 stars. Totally Killer. It's a slasher and time travel movie rolled into one. Jamie's efforts to control the future lead to some embarrassing social situations, but that doesn't hinder the film's enjoyability overall. Highlights include said effort's fascinating effects on the future, and some jokes highlighting how much less strict the 80s were. My rating? 3.5 stars. Chicken Run: Dawn of the Nugget. The premise and themes are so mundane and predictable that your expectations are deflated almost immediately, and the feeble humor doesn't inspire much confidence either. So it's nowhere near as good as the first movie, but ultimately still fun enough. Easily my favorite scene is when Molly realizes something's wrong. My rating? 3 stars. Dumb Money. It manages to make a story about the stock market accessible and thrilling. I'd heard the true story briefly, so was fascinated to see a more detailed version here. It focuses on the character's perpetual dilemma on whether to sell or hold. The uncertainty heightens the tension to insane levels. My rating? 4 stars. And last but not least, the one video game I watched as a long play before the year was out. There's actually a bit of a story behind why I broke my viewing order to watch this one, but I'll go over that after the review. Stray Gods, the role-playing musical. Not only are the songs great, but they play into the music-related power central to the narrative. Plus, it's an intriguing murder mystery with a fascinating interpretation of modern-day Greek gods. It's presented through still images, which makes you wonder how the song sequences would play out in full motion. My rating? 4 stars. So why did I decide on Stray Gods? Well, I've been watching a lot of top 10 games of 2023 videos looking for as many new recommendations as possible. One that came to my attention was Cocoon, which is directed by Jep Carlson, the designer of Limbo and Inside. I'd already bought Limbo, but not Inside, and it was so cheap in the Steam Winter Sale that I thought I might as well buy another game alongside it to make it more worthwhile. I was torn between Stray Gods and Sea of Stars, and since the long play of Stray Gods is much shorter, I figured that'd help me come to a decision sooner. Sea of Stars also comes highly recommended on many of the aforementioned top 10 lists, but I'll get to that one later, along with all the other long plays on my watch later list. Now, I usually end each year with a blog post dedicated to my top 10 favourites of that year's movies, but sadly I didn't do that this time. Not only was I so busy working on the videos that I had neither the time nor the mental discipline to write it, but I was getting rather tired of making those annual lists consistently since 2011 anyway. Still, you can find my 50-word reviews of all the 2023 movies I've seen, both in this video and the marathon one. And if you're curious, my top 10 favourites are... Number 10, Past Lives. Number 9, Missing. Number 8, Sound of Freedom. Number 7, Talk to Me. Number 6, Dumb Money. Number 5, Tetris. Number 4, Oppenheimer. Number 3, Nimona. Number 2, Godzilla Minus One. And number 1, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. Now, I'm working on one last video before I close the book on 2023, but before that, I should probably address what was arguably the year's biggest headline in terms of cinema, the SAG-AFTRA strike that lasted for nearly 5 months before the contract was officially ratified. I haven't discussed it until now because other people more knowledgeable than me have already covered it better. But I have to say, given the circumstances and concerns that inspired it, I think the strike was entirely justified. While as a viewer I haven't always been enthusiastic about the movies themselves, I bear no ill will towards the people actually making them. Not everything agrees with my personal tastes, obviously, but I wish nothing but the best for the actors and screenwriters who are so often exploited and mistreated by the industry. Hopefully this strike will give the studio executives the major wake-up call they need. The same goes for the thousands of layoffs across the video game industry. We can only hope things get better moving forward, that serious steps are taken to ensure better treatment for all employees. Well, on that rather depressing note blended with a little hope, that's all I have to say. Now let's look forward to 2024 and try to make it a happy and prosperous year. I'll continue to watch movies and play games, and there'll be more reviews in the months to come. So feel free to like the video, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.